This is the story of a young girl, beautiful, talented, with a sole dream of having the world know her name. The story about her struggles to finally finding herself in the lap of fame. Just like in her reels, she's on that stage, the spotlight blinding her. She's on a high and it seems like there's no coming down. But then something clicks. A new fear unlocks within her, making nothing feel good enough anymore. She's starting to grow more critical of herself, like her mother had always been of her, and is now determined to be better. She begins to try harder to be more on beat, more glamorous, more poised, more beautiful, more talented, just more. But all her attempts fail before her own eyes, making her mind and spirit rot. We see the price she had to pay for her fame, as her ambition turns into an obsession, just waiting for the power and money-hungry industry that she's a part of to exploit her. And as we approach the final act of the movie, what we're shown is a disturbing end that's open for interpretation. Was that ending her redemption, or the worst fate she could have ever known? One of being a prisoner without any bars in sight. That was more or less the premise of HBO's 2023 summer release starring Lily Rose Depp and many more famous names called The Idol. Well, at least it was supposed to be that. A promising 6-episode series about the dark side of fame and the exploitation of a young pop idol named Jocelyn. But the show instead became what the Rolling Stone quotes, "from satire to the thing it was satirizing," according to their now infamous March 2023 article, even before the show started streaming. Now, it hasn't been that long since the last episode aired, and already there are tons of videos about how much people hate this show. And even if you haven't watched it, you have definitely heard about it. I, for one, am one of the people that have watched all 5 episodes, and let's just say I have opinions. So in this video, we are going to be focusing on what happens when creators walk a very thin line between exploration and exploitation, and why even good direction, casting, and ambition can never win the battle against bad story writing. But before that, hello angels, it's Ash. This is my first YouTube video since 2018, and I am so excited to start YouTube videos again. I had a channel back in 2018, 17, I think. Don't look it up. You will find nothing. I have made sure it's off of the internet because it was so bad. But anyway, this is going to be a really exciting adventure because I love comedy style videos here on YouTube, and after watching them, I always feel like I have either something more to add or just some more insights that I wish that they could have discussed. And so I started this. I think that starting this channel is going to really give me the opportunity to do that. So if you as well are into comedy style videos, are really tired of the other social media platforms that exist, because I am dead on all of them. And if you like movie reviews and all other such kind of content, I would urge you to stick around and subscribe. But for now, let's have a look at what went so wrong with The Idol.
When my wife read me the article, I looked at her and I just said, I think we're about to have the biggest show of the summer.
When I first heard about the premise of this story, back when the show was announced to be in the works, I was very excited. The word idol has evolved massively, and so has music as an art form, making its creators an inspiration for people like me and you who are fascinated by the artistry and the soul that goes into creating good music. The show's initial concept and storyline looked like it had so much potential to shine a spotlight on the fallacy of fame. And with one of the biggest artists in the world, Abel Tesfaye, aka The Weeknd, being a part of the star cast and one of the producers for the show, whose music videos infamously explore controversial themes, I was expecting a show that would be jarring, bold, and scandalous. And my god, was this show all of those things, but in the worst way imaginable. But I digress. Shortly after announcing notable cast members like Lily Rose Depp, Jennie from Blackpink, Troye Sivan, Dan Levy, and Hank Azaria, it was announced that director Amy Seimetz stepped down and Euphoria director Sam Levinson was onboarded to direct and co-write the show after more than 80% of filming was complete due to creative differences between the previous director Amy and The Weeknd, with him claiming a show about the life and abuse of a female pop star was heading too much into a female perspective.
You are made of stupid.
Now, the internet had opinions on the matter, as the internet always does, with Sam Levinson's previous work Euphoria being an already controversial show both on and off set. The Idol was making headlines before production was ever complete. But finally, the first 2 episodes of The Idol premiered at the 76th Cannes Film Festival in May 2023, where the series actually received a 5-minute standing ovation, with the cast and crew singing praises of their own show and throwing shade at the Rolling Stones article like a bunch of angsty teenagers, as if knowing this show was going to be the peak of cinematic excellence. My excitement started to grow more. But then reviews from those critics that attended the film festival started rolling in, and they were not good. Because while we don't know which of the critics gave this show a standing ovation, we definitely know which ones did not. As the Rotten Tomato critics' consensus reads, every bit as florid and sleazy as the industry it seeks to satirize, The Idol places itself on a pedestal with unbridled style but wilts under the spotlight. Yikes, seems like Abel was unable to make a good show. I'm sorry. But I still wanted to give this show a chance before I judged, and also because I was so scared that The Weeknd was going to hunt me down on Twitter. And after having viewed all 5 episodes, I realized the critics were absolutely wrong about this show, because it is so much more worse than any of them are giving it credit of being. From the romanticization of abuse for the creation of art, to technical issues like weird pacing and too on-the-nose dialogue, which from the looks of it could have been even worse had they aired that cancelled 6th episode. Bad acting, bad character arcs, insecure writing, I'm going to talk about this later. Shots that made me laugh more than they should have, to the endless freaking scenes, which I'm not hating on because I dislike seeing nudity on screen, but when it's inappropriately just shoved in, when building the storyline would have been so much more impactful, I find it just an excuse for the producers to create softcore porn, honestly. This show was set out with the dream of challenging the norms of storytelling. And it did, just not in the way that it wanted, but by making an absolute dumpster fire that people can't stop staring at and talking about. Like, I'm talking about this show right now, and that's all fun and games until you realize it's not for the creators of this show, who are taking it very seriously as a commentary piece and are jumping to its defense on social media. And this is the part that truly pisses me off. Excusing all the messed up things you are doing in your bad show under the guise of commentary. So let's dissect the creation of a commentary piece, and more importantly, what sets a good one apart from a bad one.
And just, creating something special, daring, exciting, fun, make people laugh, piss some people off, it's just...
One look at the critic and audience reviews for this show reveals one common complaint: exploitative. And while I do get the sentiment behind that critique, I just think calling this show exploitative is depriving it of the many more criticisms it deserves that I listed earlier. Instead, this critique makes me think about the innate nature of this kind of media, of walking that very thin line between exploring how exploitative any particular industry is through film and media, to instead exploiting those very themes of abuse and trauma for shock value. As per the Idol, cast members have come forward saying that they felt the sets to be a safe space, and while the extent of our patriarchal society's influence on this sentiment is debatable, I think choosing to baby-grown women when they say how they feel with a "no, we know you've been exploited" is very regressive and backwards. Don't get me wrong, I know that the film and television industry has a track record of exploitative sets, but ultimately, I think it is for the people directly affected to testify their stance on these matters. But even still, this show feels very exploitative. And what I think people are wanting to call it exploitative of is not the cast and crew members, but the trope of the broken beauty in media. It was seeing this age-old trope of the damaged, beautiful woman whose existence in itself caters to the male gaze, repeated in this show that made me want to create this video at all. These fictional and at times real stories of women where all of her being, her happiness, her suffering, her sexuality, and everything in between is for the pleasure and the spectacle of the men around her. And I think that's what's more worthy of a discussion. We've seen this trope in media of various forms throughout our whole lives, how every aspect of a woman births from what it is in relation to a man. Her happiness is of value when it comes from being the perfect, saintly daughter to her daddy as a young girl, and building a home, having children with her husband as a grown woman. Her sexuality is a spectacle for the men around her. Something, when embraced by her behind closed doors, is arousing, but sinister, whorish, and worthy of punishment even if she does it publicly. Even her sorrow and pain are not her own, sexualized by men and dismissed as not real emotions. And whether the creators agree with it or not, The Idol is a display of all of these tropes without adding much value to the greater conversation of women's exploitation in and by media. This show again feels exploitative of the subject matter of abuse itself, casually showing displays of it in long, non-breaking shots in every single episode. And it reminds me of similar works we have seen before. Like in Blonde, the 2022 fictionalized telling of the life story of icon Marilyn Monroe by director Andrew Dominik that again felt so very exploitative of a dead icon whose life story was boiled down to a passion of the Christ for Marilyn Monroe. And this is not a new form of media. Another example of this is in Showgirls, 1995, directed by Paul Verhoeven, the camp classic story of Nomi, who arrives in Las Vegas with the dream of becoming a top showgirl at a casino show, whose story is accelerated by queerbaiting, nudity, sexual assault, and more exploitation and abuse. It seems like there's this tried and true recipe for creating the story of an exploited female character in a show that makes more headlines for its controversial directors and pornographic scenes than the social commentary it tries to bring focus on. Many of these directors clearly driving inspiration from one another. The age-old broken beauty has been written and directed by men who rid themselves of all responsibility by calling their work explorative and evolutionary, blaming anybody, the society, the viewers, even the critics for seeing it as anything but a commentary piece. Some even going as far as to boil down the story of the very real woman they are portraying to nothing, with Blonde director Andrew Dominik saying it's the story of a person who kills herself, and responding to criticism of the film being exploitative with kind of strange because she's dead. This movie doesn't make a difference one way or another. It's painful to see how this kind of media and the vicarious witnessing of women's abuse that it exposes us to has impacted and will continue to impact us in the future. To think that there will be more Sams, Abels, Andrews, and Pauls who get to tell a story they will never know the gravity of impact of. And to think of the young girls that will try to look sexy when they are crying in front of the mirror, and the little boys that are going to desire these broken, abused, and exploited women they see on screen. Ridding yourself of the responsibility of creating media like this, knowing full well who the end audience that's going to watch this show is going to be, regardless of what your intentions are, should not be okay. It's 2023. How are some people still supporting The Idol? We cannot rid the creators of this show of the responsibility for its impact by letting them get away with statements like the show was created to be fun, to make people laugh and piss some people off. Saying that the creators of The Idol are not responsible for the way the show is perceived rids these very large production houses and everybody involved of the responsibility of creating content that they know is going to have an impressionable audience. So, you will then ask me, is there really any way to make shows and movies about abuse and exploitation without abuse and exploitation? Which brings me to my final chapter.
We also see how desperate Tedros has become. This pimp from the Midwest who shows up in Beverly Hills ends up being the victim.
The answer to that question is yes. Up until this point, I might have sounded so cynical of these themes in media, when actually that is not the case at all. In fact, one of my all-time favorite movies has this very theme. The fact of the matter is, creating movies and TV shows that expose the exploitative nature of an industry is absolutely possible if you're actually trying to do just that and not create an abuse, fetish-fueled softcore porn. And that would require the creators to spend some time actually researching the stories of exploitation they want to show, instead of pandering to their male viewers and stroking their inflated egos. And so, I've created a quick 3-step masterclass for the creators of The Idol so they never feel the need to create a show as shitty ever again. Step number 1, lean into the perspective. Abel, this is for you. Leading into the perspective of the abusee instead of the perpetrator, which is a tried and true method, and in the Idol's case would be Jocelyn instead of Tedros, at least initially. This might seem like the obvious answer, and many people would suggest that, but in my honest opinion, this is a bigger conversation than male and female perspectives. I feel like leading into the perspective of the most engaging and interesting spectator in the story is what brings the story to life. Imagine Jocelyn's story told through her own perspective, which, as the show later reveals, she's the mastermind. So, no, I don't think that telling the story from her perspective would have made an engaging show. But neither was going the Tedros' point of view route a good idea. Okay, now reimagine this story told through the lens of an eerie stalker who spies on Jocelyn as she sleeps, stalks Tedros before he's ever in Jocelyn's life, and knows all along she's been lying about her abuse. Now that would be an interesting story, and is of course the storyline of the film I spoke about a bit earlier called Perfect Blue. And I want to make a full video essay about this movie because I love it so much. In essence, because I love to draw parallels, Ximena from Perfect Blue and Jocelyn from The Idol share so many similarities. Ximena is an idol who wants to explore a new direction with her career and who also gets targeted by the wrong people. The similarities are insane. Yet, the creator of Perfect Blue, Satoshi-kun, was able to create a masterpiece that also has the same amount of nudity, abuse, exploitation, and many more of the same themes that The Idol does. But it actually exudes that feeling of ear and disgust the Weeknd wanted to achieve with his character Tedros, but instead just ended up giving us memes and making us inappropriately laugh. Perfect Blue is a story of exploitation and not a story for capturing it. Even the example of Nina, who wants to be a prima ballerina at the Swan Lake show in Darren Aronofsky's 2010 Black Swan, shares so many similarities to The Idol, but is also completely different at the same time due to its excellently nuanced story writing and cinematography. Which brings me to step 2, get the writers back on set. It shocks me that a show was able to pass through the filter of so many departments that are involved in creating a large-scale production like this and was still able to suck so badly. Guys, this was back when the WGA was not on strike, so I'm lost on why this show's writing was so bad. As I said at the start of the video, no amount of good acting, star cast, even great direction, and at times good music can win the battle against bad story writing. Director Sam Levinson's bad story writing is exasperating and like the shit frosting on top of a shit cake. His also controversial one-liners are a poor attempt to hide his very insecure and bad story writing. Again, I'm a fan of giving credit where it's due, and another great movie that comes to my mind when I think of this subject matter is The Dirty Picture, a 2011 biographical music drama by director Milan Luthria about the life of Indian actress Silk Smitha, who in her own right was one of the biggest sex symbols from India. I was too young to watch the movie when it was originally released, but years later, one watch made me realize the significance of good story writing when it comes to this broken beauty trope in cinema. Because although there are many that recall this movie for only the controversy surrounding it, many more remember it for its nuanced storytelling of a controversial woman's life that was humanized more through this movie than through any single piece of media made about her life and her career while she was still alive. And that's the power of good story writing, which brings me to my final point. Step 3. You can't just "it was all a dream" out of your bad story. Now, this was the part of the show where it became so incredibly obvious that Sam Levinson and The Weeknd were trying to pull an "it was all a dream" and "it was the evil white woman all along" without ever trying to build on that story. It felt so out of touch and like the attempt at a last saving grace for this burning pile of dog shit of a show. This unwarranted arc of Jocelyn being the actual manipulator and mastermind who got what she wanted using The Weeknd's character Tedros as a muse and squeezing him out of his group of mediocrely talented hobos got me so mad. This switch in the character felt so rushed because it had absolutely no foundation built throughout the entirety of the show. I get that white feminism is a trending new evil trope in pop culture, and had it been executed well would have been very impactful. But no, instead of giving the viewers enough context to understand how Jocelyn could have faked the story of her abuse when all the people around her sympathize with her for it, or making any sense at all, was less important than the show having a 3-minute long shot of Tedros and Jocelyn poorly talking dirty to each other and ruining shopping for us. And even if we play along as viewers, how is it not blatantly obvious that Jocelyn is still the victim in the scenario? She is still claiming Tedros to be her one and only love in her stadium full of fans. The same Tedros who's been in jail for assault and trafficking, a cult leader who's physically abused his followers and Jocelyn. Again, I can't see it, but maybe good story and character writing could have helped us believe this arc. But the idol fails us again and gives us nothing but visuals. In conclusion, even after standing on my soapbox and screaming the criticisms I have for it, I do not hate this show. Hold on, wait a minute, let me finish. Do I think it's bad? Yes. Do I find the creators creepy? Oh my god, yes. But do I think this show deserves the hate it's getting? Yes and no. I'm conflicted. I don't think this show deserves the hate it's getting, and the irony of this coming from me does not pass me. The only reason I say that is because I think it was created to spark controversy and get people talking, which it did. And while I'm still of the opinion that being callous with your intention for this kind of show does not rid you of the responsibility of creating a toxic, trauma-powered porn, I do think this show will go down in history as what not to do when creating stories like this. Ultimately, I think what we are witnessing is a direct outcome of outrage porn, a term coined by political cartoonist and essayist Tim Crater of the New York Times, which basically describes any type of media or narrative that is designed to use outrage to provoke strong emotional reactions for the purpose of expanding audiences. And that is exactly what I think this show is designed to do, to stir up controversy and outrage. It makes me hopeful more than angry, happy even to see the stance that the internet has taken for calling out this show for what it is, and the focus shifting from how bad this show is to the bigger conversation about exploitation, abuse, trauma, sexuality, and how all of these play a part in artistic expression. I think this show would have been great as a 5-minute weekend music video where he explores the same concepts with the same beautiful cinematography, minus every other bad thing about this show. In my opinion, this show is a product of this trope of beautifully mediocre and meaningless media we are seeing more and more of across pop culture in recent history. Content that does not connect but mesmerizes you enough to keep watching. And so long as you keep watching, you don't stop to question what exactly it is that you're watching. Maybe the idol will result in a society that questions the cost of menacingly beautiful but hurtful content. Or maybe we'll see more idols uncover before our eyes, too enchanted to stop and judge. How do you think it will go? Thank you so much for watching this video. This video has been such a long time in the making. I have been filming for the past 5 hours. Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I can't wait to see the conversation that this is going to start. And leave your suggestions for any topics that you'd like me to cover in future videos down there as well. I am so happy that you chose to watch this video. And that's a wrap. I will see you in my next one. Bye-bye.